everyone, welcome back. I'm actually here with a guest today. This is Miss Leslie Davis. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm almost 66 years old and I'm good friends with her aunt, and she asked me to come by and talk a little bit about mental health, and I agreed to do so. So excited to be here.
Well, let's get started. We do our little tink. So I guess first we can kind of start with what I'm most familiar with, and then we can kind of delve into things I'm not familiar with. So I mentioned in my first video that I struggle with depression and anxiety, and Miss Leslie, would you like to share your experiences with us?
Yes, I have also, probably since I was about 10 or 11. My dad used to come in to tuck me in at night, and I would always be crying and talking about how difficult life was, which is pretty deep for a 10-year-old.
For a little kid.
But in the days I grew up, you didn't really talk a lot about mental health, and it wasn't pinpointed. There wasn't a Google to look it up and say, what is this I'm feeling or thinking? So it was a real challenge, you know, and I should have known something was wrong, because I do think a lot of it is hereditary.
Yeah, because in my family too, I mentioned earlier to her that I'm sure now that depression does run in my family.
Right.
And it's really hard to pinpoint those things whenever you're little. I couldn't talk to my parents about it. Like you said,
Yeah.
you just cry to your dad. I would tell my mom, she'd be like, oh no, it's fine, just like cheer up. And she struggles with anxiety and depression as well. And it's just shocking that like parents, even who have struggled with it themselves, can't recognize that in kids.
Right. Yeah, mental health's come a long way. When I was growing up, it was to go see the doctor and get a pill, and my grandmother, I believe, probably had a chemical imbalance. My mother as well. They both were on a lot of medication, and that's how they dealt with mental health back then. There wasn't someone you talked to. I remember the first time I went to see a counselor, and it was about dealing with my mother. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, I'm living to please my mother, and I went through a lot of really great counseling to learn some lessons, to only repeat them later when I went to the workplace.
Being a people pleaser?
Yes.
I was so terrible about that. My mom I love my mom. Mom, I know you're watching this. I love you. I love you dearly. You were the first person to watch my videos, and I'm letting you know that I love you, and I appreciate everything that you do for me. But you were a little bit overbearing.
Oh.
The older I got, I kind of loosened up a little bit. I went to therapy whenever I was 15, I think, was the first time I went to my very first therapy session. And she was like, her name is Miss Charlotte, and she said, Julianne, you need to just let go. You need to, like, you're like so tightly wound right now with other people and with yourself and with your mom and your dad, that you just need to let go a little bit and take care of yourself. Don't take care of other people. And I'm still learning. It's still really difficult.
It's a process.
It really is.
I have a friend who passed away, and she had a saying that I actually hated, but I embrace it more now, and that is that by the time you learn how to live, it's time to die. Because it sounds negative, but the difference with my mom was that we were actually raised in a home where we were taught there was unconditional love, and we were told we could do and be anything we wanted to be. But my mother took after her mother, which was, there was an emotional drain of trying to make us feel guilty for everything.
Yeah.
So when I'd leave, I'd put my hand on the doorknob, and my mother would say, go ahead and enjoy yourself. I'll just be here all alone. And she would use the term, which I will refuse to use today, because we either become like that person or we repel to
the opposite.
Correct. Yeah. And so her famous saying was, if you loved me, and I have never used that term in my entire adult life, because I didn't want anyone to feel like if you did not, or you did do something that equated to love. I wanted
It's
them
like,
to know that
that's terrible.
you can love me and we can disagree.
Yeah,
you know,
you
that's
just
a big
talk it
lesson in
out.
life. I didn't know that I could tell my mother no, and it was okay.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
understand that.
so I
completely.
felt the need to say yes, and then that transferred into the workplace, and
Yeah.
that's actually why I actually left work. Was I didn't really retire. I quit because I was still dealing. It kept coming back. You revisit the same problems in
It's
your
trauma.
lifetime.
Trauma,
Yeah,
I feel
and
like, keeps a hold of everybody in that way.
It
It's kind of
does.
like a cage. What I told my therapist one time, it's like I'm in this hole, and every time I think I dig myself out of it, I'm like in another hole again.
right.
Or I'm shoveling the dirt back onto myself.
Right. Well, I told a friend of mine's daughter, I said, this may sound negative, but it's true, that whatever problems you had when you were a teenager, you're going to carry those problems through your whole life. It's almost like you're in boot camp and you're learning this same lesson over and over. And
Until
that
it
lesson,
sticks.
yeah, and until you finally get to the point where, like with me, I can actually enjoy being alone. I can actually tell someone no and not feel guilty. And they will also know that I may love them and care for them, but I'm just saying no to that one item, not no to you.
Yeah, just no to.
And it's a lesson
I
to
don't.
learn.
I don't want to do this exact thing.
Right.
But we can compromise, or we
Right.
can talk about why I don't want to do that and why that makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
I had a really hard time with that. I've only been in like 2 serious relationships, and both of them were. I didn't realize I was being manipulated. And I don't like putting people down, especially on social media, but I'm not going to mention who they are, but these 2 people, they were so different in very different ways. So one of them would get really sad on purpose and cry, and he would make me feel bad for him. And the other one would get angry and make me feel like I was doing something wrong. I'm not in a relationship right now because I don't think I'll be able to get in one until I'm able to realize I need to not let that happen.
Right.
You need to be able to read those social cues. Like, is this person really upset, or are they just trying to get what they want?
Right. Right.
Which is
yeah,
with a
it's
lot
very.
of people. Manipulation
Yeah.
is just part of being a human.
It is, and it's hard to sort out like people's motives, because I judge people more like by motives than anything. You can make a mistake, you can ask me to forgive you, and I think your faith has a lot to do with growing through these things as well. But if I find out that your motives were wrong, I have a harder time with that.
Yeah.
Because you are trying to manipulate me or a situation to get an end result that you want. So yeah, it's a real challenge, you know, but you grow through it, and you do repeat those same mistakes
I have a
quite
bunch of-
often. So
I have a bunch of cheesy quotes in my room, and one of them is, learn through what you grow through. And it has all these little flowers on it, and that's why I have all these flower tattoos. Not only because I like flowers, but I really like plants for that reason. Because if you take care of them just like a person, and if you help them grow, they're beautiful.
right.
And they keep on living.
I have a tattoo. The only tattoo I have on my back is the yin yang.
Oh, that's
It's
cute.
because I think that you have to find the balance, like the good
everything.
Yeah, and it's okay to have good and bad, which those mixed together teach you things.
Yeah.
It's the same principle
They
you're
really
talking
do.
about as well. So yeah, but you will repeat some of the same situations, and I do think having your faith, and I think being vulnerable. We talked about that
Yeah,
earlier.
and stepping out of your comfort
Is
zone.
really, really important, because it's very difficult. It's hard to believe, probably to most people who know me now, that I was actually a terrified child. And I was,
Yeah.
my first few jobs even, I was embarrassed to talk in front of people. I was embarrassed to talk on the phone in front of people. I was always worried about what they would
Yeah.
and so each step you take, and I call them baby steps, get you where you're going. And I think that, you know, you have faith and trust in yourself and your instincts. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to do it. And I think that ultimately it does work out, and then people begin to embrace you and accept you for who you are,
Yeah.
you know?
It's really difficult to do those kinds of things for a lot of
It is.
people. Like what you said, a lot of people didn't know that about you. My first video you'd watched with me before we started this, and people messaged me like a few hours after I posted, and they're like, I never knew.
Right.
I never knew.
Right.
And then I had them
Yeah.
open up to me and talk to me about those
Right.
kinds of things. And that's why I'm doing this. Because you're not going to know what people are going through unless they
right.
talk about it.
That's right. And to really know somebody and understand them is to actually hear their story.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hear their story, it really sheds light. And I've really enjoyed listening to some of the David Letterman series about various people, and it's very interesting because we have a persona that people perceive of who we are, but there's always a story behind that
Yeah.
of how you got to where you are today. So yeah, it's a journey. I mean, because your motivation is to share your story and to help other people, and you cannot go wrong when you do that.
No, it's hard. Oh, man,
That
it's
is
the
the
cat.
cat. Yeah. Hello, kitty, kitty.
Oh, George. We can talk about going out of your comfort zone and like how did you do that whenever you were like in your workplace?
I actually did get counseling
Really?
every time. Without a doubt, I've had some great counselors. In fact, I saw a man walking in my neighborhood 2 days ago, and I stopped and tooted the horn and waved because I realized it was Larry, one of the guys I had gotten counseling from years ago.
Aw.
Yeah, but I think what the counseling taught me too is that there's only one entity that you can control, and that's yourself. You can control how you think, you can control what you say, you can control how you react, what you do, what you don't do. And I think that that was a real eye-opener for me that kept coming around in my counseling sessions. And another thing was there was a counselor, Chuck Wood, who is no longer among us, not on this earth, but he had a great saying. He used to tell me, never commit more to someone else than they're willing to commit to you. And I thought that was a really great line because I did have a habit of over committing to other people.
And not taking care of yourself.
Well, then you have an expectation that they'll do the same. And when they don't, then you're disappointed, then you could get depressed or try to
You're
figure out
thinking
what's
about
going
like,
on.
well, what did I do?
Right.
Why don't you love me?
Right.
Why aren't you treating me like I'm treating
Right.
you?
Right, and Chuck just taught me, he said, you are overcommitting to other people. So if you come this far, they should meet you, and then you can go a little further and they meet you, but don't just go all in, because I am like an all-in person. I mean, when I'm in, I'm all in, and then there's no question where I stand, and if you're not with me, then I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, so, and I think all that is being vulnerable too. We keep going back to that. It's being very vulnerable.
It's important. It's scary. It's
It is.
really scary. Just even the word, whenever you think of vulnerable, you think of like weak or like unprotected, but in reality, I think that's what everybody needs is to be a little bit more vulnerable and let people see them, like see you, how you want to be perceived and who you are. And one of my favorite books is Perks of Being a Wallflower. And one of the quotes in it is, we accept the love that we think we deserve. And that is so true. Whenever I dated those people, I was like, this is it for me. I love this person. I think that like I'm giving them all my love and they're giving me all that they can.
Right.
But in reality, that's just what I thought of myself then. And now I look at myself and I'm like, why did you do that? Why did you let that happen?
Right.
Not letting people walk all over you is really hard.
It is. And Brene Brown, when she talks about vulnerability, she explains it too, that, you know, it is a bearing of your own soul. And it even goes deeper into like in that moment when you have had a mammogram and you're waiting for the result. That's a moment of you being very vulnerable. You know, telling your mom what you told her is a form of vulnerability, you know?
Yeah.
So it's tough. I mean, I've been at the bed of several people who were breathing their last breath. That's the ultimate vulnerability.
I know.
You know, it really is.
Yeah.
And so you gotta embrace,
Those
you know,
moments.
I told you on the way over, I just found out that a friend of mine passed away a few days ago and I didn't know.
Yeah.
I felt terrible, but I'm so glad I responded and went that last night and sat with him
Yeah, you
and
said
his
you
wife.
had like that feeling that you
Yeah.
just went to go.
That I was supposed to go. I had no idea.
Yeah.
because we don't know, and that's a part of being vulnerable in life in itself, you know. And there's a lot of beauty in it, you know, to look back and say, hey, you know, I showed up.
I was there
you know,
for
everybody
this
likes
person.
that saying, I showed up, you know, because you never know.
I feel terrible. The only real I've had 2 experiences with death. One of them being my grandma, my Mimi, and whenever she passed away, my mom didn't go to see her because I was home. She didn't want to leave me. I don't think she wanted to wake me up, and I feel terrible about that. And I remember going to the funeral, and I was just like, "What is happening?"
Right.
That was my first experience with that, and I was like, "I can't believe this." And my aunt. My mom wasn't there for her. She was there all alone, and I just felt so terrible about it. I think I was 11 or 10, and I didn't know how to cope with that. And I don't think
it's traumatic.
It really is. I didn't fully accept it until I graduated in 2019, and I thought that she was going to be there.
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy!"
Yeah.
But life just
It just never know.
Does its thing.
When Joe and I met. It was later in life, and I had never been married or been with anybody. I was a work girl. It was always about work, And then we got together, and we were together 9 years. And about 2 weeks before he died, we had this incredible conversation. And I remembered sitting on the porch, because this went on for an hour or 2, and he talked about how great his life had been. And then, you know, 7 or 8 days later, he dies of a massive heart attack. I had no idea. He taught me a lot about being vulnerable and open, because that relationship was just really a game changer for me in my life, because I was the only one who gave and I wasn't willing to receive. And I mean, you live with somebody, you learn a lot, right?
That's so. I've learned about my parents in that way. I've never lived on my own yet, but I hope to someday, someday soon. But the more I grew up, the more I kind of realized, these are other human beings with their own feelings and their own thoughts. They're not just my parents.
Right,
They're their own people.
Right.
And I think a lot of people recognize that a little too late in life by not showing up, like you said, not showing up for those kind of people. And that's why I want to try my best to be with my family and there for my family when they need me, because you never know.
You don't. And I think that's great. So you're showing your vulnerability with them, and I think it's great that you lived at home. We lived at home for a long time. Yeah, my parents were those kind of parents. They actually wanted to build a commune. Maybe your mother's that way. And
sure she would.
She wanted us all to live with her forever. Man. And we would be like, "Mother, we have to go."
I'm the baby. I'm the only girl, and I'm the baby.
Okay.
So I feel like my mom's just a little empty nest syndrome, kind of scared, you know. Yeah. But I'll be okay, Mom.
Yeah, she's gonna be fine.
I'll be okay.
You did a good job on her, for sure.
I think she did all right. I think she did okay. Thank you so much for opening up and talking to me and to everybody else.
You're welcome.
And I hope you guys are ready for more people, because I'm gonna try my best to find all kinds of people to talk to share their stories, and hopefully bring you some ease to whatever you're going through, what you've been through, and you just don't know how to deal with it. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aunt Kay, for turning down the TV.